Breaking news. Major developments are unfolding in the fight to remove suppressors and short-barreled rifles from the National Firearms Act. As pressure mounts around the Short Act and the Hearing Protection Act, internal battles in the Senate, particularly with the unelected parliamentarian, are threatening to derail the pro-Second Amendment momentum. But this isn't over. Gun rights organizations are pushing back hard, and multiple strategies are now in motion to gut the NFA and challenge the bureaucracy standing in the way of constitutional carry and lawful ownership. In this report, we break down the latest Senate moves, what the gun owners of America are planning next, and what this means for every firearms owner watching. Stay sharp. Stay informed. This is Firearms Zone News, where facts meet firepower. Senate blocks key pro-Second Amendment language. In a surprise move, the Senate parliamentarian has ruled to strip out two critical gun rights provisions, the Short Act and the Hearing Protection Act, from the sweeping legislative package referred to as the Big Beautiful Bill. These provisions aim to remove suppressors and short-barreled rifles from the National Firearms Act, effectively deregulating two categories of firearms that many gun owners argue should never have been restricted in the first place. But that effort hit a wall. The Senate parliamentarian, an unelected staff advisor with power to determine what legislation can be included in reconciliation bills, declared that the Second Amendment-related language violated the Byrd Rule, a technical rule used to exclude provisions deemed non-budgetary. As a result, the entire repeal package was struck down. While the parliamentarian signaled she might support reducing the NFA tax to $0, she stopped short of backing full deregulation, specifically rejecting the removal of the registry and the NFA status of suppressors and SBRs. For many in the Second Amendment community, this decision highlights a deeper problem. Unelected bureaucrats wielding enormous influence over the legislative process, often against the will of the people and their elected representatives. The message from the Hill was clear. Full repeal isn't dead, but it just got a lot harder. GOA fires back. Two-front strategy. Following the parliamentarian's decision to block key pro-Second Amendment provisions, gun owners of America launched an aggressive two-front strategy aimed at reversing the ruling and keeping pressure on Capitol Hill. According to GOA, the fight isn't just about suppressors or SB rupees. It's about restoring legislative power to elected officials and pushing back against unelected gatekeepers who interfere with constitutional rights. Their message is simple. The parliamentarian should be overruled or fired. GOA is calling on Senate President J.D. Vance and President pro tempore Chuck Grassley to use their authority to ignore the parliamentarian's non-binding advice and reinsert the full language of the Short Act and the Hearing Protection Act into the final bill. They've also launched grassroots campaigns urging gun owners to call, email, and pressure key Senate figures, including Senator Thune, who holds significant influence over whether the parliamentarian's ruling stands or gets overridden. At the same time, GOA acknowledges that while fighting to restore the full repeal language, they're also working within Senate rules to gut as much of the NFA as possible, even if that means temporarily accepting a $0 tax on regulated items. GOA states that they are fighting a two-front battle to restore your rights and stop unelected staffers from killing pro-Second Amendment legislation behind closed doors. The organization believes that even partial wins, like eliminating the $200 tax, can help build legal precedent and political momentum toward a full repeal of the NFA in the future. $0 NFA tax, win or trap? With the full repeal of the National Firearms Act blocked for now, lawmakers and Second Amendment groups are weighing a fallback option, a $0 tax on suppressors and SBRs. At first glance, this might sound like a win. Removing the $200 tax stamp would save gun owners money, and some believe it could lead to wider public ownership, setting up a stronger common use argument in future court cases. But GOA and other pro-gun organizations aren't calling this a victory. In their view, the tax cut alone is not enough. Here's the problem. Under this plan, the federal registration system would remain intact. That means background checks, approval weights, fingerprints, and the full bureaucratic process of buying an NFA item, just without the fee. To many in the firearms community, this feels like a trap, a way to entrench the registry while softening opposition. Some argue that if the tax goes to zero, the urgency to repeal the rest of the NFA disappears. Worse, it could give anti-gun politicians cover to say, "We gave you something," while maintaining the core of the regulatory framework. GOA has made it clear. They want full repeal, not half measures. Their strategy is to fight for both fronts, accept what's possible in the short term, but never stop pushing to eliminate federal registration and restore full Second Amendment rights. So, is a $0 tax better than nothing? Maybe. But for many, it's not the finish line. It's just another fight in a longer war. Trump joins the fight. Just as momentum around the SHORT Act and the Hearing Protection Act appeared to stall, former President Donald Trump stepped into the ring, adding political firepower to an already volatile battle. In a public post on social media, Trump backed Congressman Greg Steub's criticism of the Senate parliamentarian, calling her an unelected bureaucrat who's sabotaging Republican efforts to deliver real results on gun rights. Trump didn't mince words. He stated clearly that the parliamentarian is blocking fantastic things in the bill, referencing key pro-Second Amendment reforms, and should not be allowed to dictate the terms of a legislative fight she was never elected to influence. This isn't just rhetoric, it's a strategic play. By publicly calling out the parliamentarian, Trump is doing what gun rights groups have struggled to do alone, turning the spotlight onto a hidden choke point in the Senate process and putting real political pressure on GOP leadership. His statement also directly challenges Senate leaders like John Thune, who has the power to recommend removing the parliamentarian altogether, or at least ignore her ruling by backing action from Senate President J.D. Vance or President pro tempore Chuck Grassley. Trump's involvement now makes this more than just a grassroots issue. It signals to voters and to reluctant lawmakers that Second Amendment policy is on the front burner, and there will be political consequences for letting this opportunity die behind closed doors. It also shifts the tone inside the Senate. What was once a procedural debate about bird rules and tax language is now a public litmus test for pro-Second Amendment credibility. Will GOP leaders side with voters or with a Senate staffer? By taking a stand, Trump re-energizes the fight and potentially paves the way for the full repeal language to be reinserted, if enough pressure mounts. For gun owners watching this unfold, it's a signal that this fight is far from over, and it's reached the national stage. What happens next? So where does this leave gun owners? Right now, the battle is being fought on multiple fronts. On one side, lawmakers and organizations like GOA are pushing to reinstate the full repeal language, removing suppressors and SBRs from the National Firearms Act entirely. On the other, some are lobbying to keep at least the $0 tax provision, seeing it as a tactical stepping stone. But even that is uncertain. If the parliamentarian rules the $0 tax is compliant, then it stays, unless Senator Schumer can muster 60 votes to strike it. If she rules it out of order, gun owners walk away with nothing. And that's the core risk. Without a strong, unified pushback, the current version of the bill could leave the registry intact, the tax repealed on paper, but freedom still buried under paperwork and red tape. According to GOA, the only way forward is for Senate leadership to override or remove the parliamentarian and restore the full repeal into the bill. That means pressure, real, sustained, Grassroots pressure. Every call, every message, every public post matters. Senators Thune, Vance, and Grassley are under the spotlight. And with Trump now weighing in, that pressure is only increasing. Whether they act or fold will shape the future of suppressor and SBR ownership for years to come. This isn't just another bill. It's a defining moment for how the Second Amendment is treated in federal law, and whether gun owners still have a voice in shaping it. As it stands, the future of suppressor and SBR ownership is hanging by a thread, caught between Senate rules, political will, and a bureaucrat with the power to silence constitutional reform. This isn't just a fight over taxes or registration. This is about whether the Second Amendment still has a place at the federal level, or if it can be erased by procedure. Gun owners across the country are watching closely, and rightly so. The outcome of this battle could define the legal landscape for NFA items for the next decade or longer. We've seen what happens when pressure fades, so now is not the time to back down. Call your senators, email your representatives, make noise on social media, because every voice adds weight, and silence is what the anti-gun side counts on. Here at Firearms Zone, we'll keep watching this story, tracking every amendment, every vote, every maneuver. Because you deserve the facts, stripped of spin, grounded in reality, and spoken from the gun range, not the ivory tower. Stay sharp, stay vigilant. This is Firearms Zone News, where your rights have a voice and we never shoot from the hip.